everybody. Welcome back to the Overwater Basses podcast. Today we're sitting down with Chris Attwell. Chris is a bass player who's played with artists like Blue, Perico Sambeat and his own project Valmuz. In the interview, we're going to be talking about Chris's studies at Berkeley College of Music in Valencia, where he got to study with Gary Willis, how Chris approaches playing through particularly complex music and harmonies, and of course why he plays Overwater basses and the story behind his own bass. Enjoy. So what drew you to Overwater in the first place? How did you find out about them, and what made you decide you wanted one of those basses?
That was actually through a friend. When I was studying at the Institute at ICMP, a guy called Floyd Elgar was studying there as well. I think he was a year below me. And he started raving on about these custom basses, which were obviously Overwater. Mm. And he went on about them for ages and ages. And I think I was using a Warwick at the time, to my shame. No offense to Warwick, but just, wasn't the bass, isn't the bass for me. Floyd got this bass, and after spending so much time, talking them up, he decided he wasn't happy with it because of the scale length. And I was like, Floyd, that is the best looking bass I think I've ever seen. What are you talking about? Anyway, I bought it off of him and just fell in love with it. It was the kind of instrument where you couldn't go anywhere without anyone saying, like, wow, that bass sounds amazing, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
I get compliments at uni, on gigs. And I think I just got on really well with the guys. We just formed a relationship, Chris and I and Martin. Mm-hmm. Almost straight away. I said, I've just got this bass and I absolutely love it. And ended up getting my own Overwater, which I've still got. It's in Spain at the moment, which is a neck through perception.
Okay, yeah.
Kind of a hybrid between the two. It's a neck through with a perception body with single coils.
Okay.
I suppose at the time I didn't really know what I wanted, but I mean, it is an incredible instrument. It's a mahogany body, Koa top, and it had, I don't know if it was one of the first basses to, have to forgive me, I can't remember the exact model of Johnny's preamp that's in it, but it's one with the parametric mid switch. And anyway, so yeah, kind of burst out of great instruments, but also really great relationship, and I felt like a part of the Overwater family almost straight away.
Did you have a lot of custom ideas you were bringing to it yourself, or was it kind of fairly off the shelf in terms of how they were making the perception models at the time?
I'd say 50-50. There were certain things that I think Scott's Perception had just come out at the time as well, or around then. That Scott with the glove, the huge bass channel that
yeah,
everyone's heard of. A few people have heard of him. Shout out to Scott. He had a wenge or wengi. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but anyway,
I
went for one of those. Please, yeah, ask Chris for that. I think I've heard people say it differently, even at Overwater, I think.
Yeah.
So I went for one of those wenge neck with Paduk stripes. I'd seen a bass that had these red stripes,
like
redwood kind of stripes in a wenge neck, and I thought that looks great.
Yeah.
And what do they call them? Where the strings go through the body, through body stringing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another thing we had added. It's got a passive active switch. I'm not sure if that's standard with those electronics.
Yeah, it depends on the preamp, I think. I mean, I know that mine doesn't have that on mine, and mine's an East preamp as well. So it depends on the model.
So there was that, and the ramp as well, which initially was 3 different ebony ramps that Martin had fitted, which looked great. And I was kind of going for the Gary Willis thing.
Yeah.
Just like one level platform to the right hand. And it's now just one ramp in the middle of the 2 pickups.
Okay. So you just got area kind of
flapping really
going between. So does that give you a bit more space at the end of the neck for slapping?
Exactly. Like previously, when the 3 ramps were on, there was just no space at all.
Yeah.
And I suppose, yeah, I mean, not necessarily the best sound, but the most precise sound is going to be above either each pickup that's on. at the time. So, but there's not too much need for that. I mean, I suppose for walking, like a softer, rounder sound, I would have used the upper ramp, which was between the fingerboard and the neck pickup.
Yeah.
But now I can lean in or play over the fingerboard even.
Yeah. It's something that Zoltan Dekany got me on when I was at Leeds. Was if you
Right.
play walking lines, playing up there, kind of next to the edge of the fingerboard, and kind of softening out that sound a bit as well. It's interesting you have the ramp on it. You're the what are we on now? You're the third out of 4 people I've interviewed so far who've all got ramps. And it's quite different players. Trevor Barry has a ramp on his new Progress.
Right.
Paul Peary has one on his Perception, and yourself. And actually, it's interesting. I was talking to Paul about, because my issue with ramps would always be that, like what you said there with the slapping, it's kind of getting your index finger underneath enough to kind of pop the strings. Paul just has the ramp all the way up, doesn't have an issue with it, and Trevor has a little notch taken out of his, so the ramp goes up to the end of the neck on the B string side, but on the G string side there's a little notch so he can kind of hook his finger in and get under that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
It's not one I'd seen before. I think it came with the full thing, and then he got Martin to take a piece out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll have to look out for that.
Yeah, it's coming.
What's the bass?
It's his. He's just had a Progress made, a 5-string Progress, which has the Roland MIDI pickup on it, and all the controls. You can control, patch selectors and stuff on the bass.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah, so he's using that on the new series of Strictly. In fact, the video for that is on our YouTube already, and I'm just publishing the transcript of that on the Overwater site today. But yeah, that's a really interesting one, a real custom design as well. Almost kind of wooden Millennium Falcon kind of vibes to it, if that makes any sense at all. But yeah, it's really interesting. They've got some of that kind of 80s Whitney stuff coming up on Strictly, and he uses it for like a sine wave as well underneath the orchestra when they're doing those kinds of things on it. Really interesting.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's a cool bass. I think there's a couple like that out there now. But yeah, so that's a really novel one. Talk me through the move to Berkeley in Valencia. You were already quite established in London, doing well for yourself as a bass player. What made you decide to go back into studying and also, to move out to Spain and kind of almost start all over again?
Yeah, it's a good question. I seem to have this conversation quite a lot with people as well. And I think it was a product of living in London and living the London life. Huge demand for rent, and just, I don't know how deep to go into it really, but I had a place offered at Trinity, Laban, to do a master's there, and Berkeley as well. So I applied to Berkeley. I wanted to go to Boston because it was like, everyone just talks like Berkeley, Boston, and if you look at, you only need a few of the names that have been there to think, wow, like, there's not really a better place to study. I didn't think I'd get in, but I thought it's worth a try. So I applied to Berkeley. By the way, let me just say, I didn't, to my shame, I didn't even know Valencia existed at the time. I didn't know where it was, or, certainly didn't know there was a Berkeley Valencia. Mm-hmm. So when I applied for Berkeley, there was a box on the form that said, would you consider Berkeley Valencia? I just ticked it because I thought, well, if it increases any chances of studying at Berkeley, I'll do it. I didn't know where it was. I hadn't looked it up. And as I say, I had Trinity, then I had the place come up at Berkeley. And I was just living, I suppose most musicians do in London. I was taking as many gigs as I got offered, working a lot. I mean, sometimes I'd do 2 weeks on the trot without a day off. And I just thought, this isn't really a sustainable lifestyle. I remember looking up to people like Yannick Wisdala from the age of 18, who came over to the Institute. And, right from day one, I saw him and other artists I was looking up to, Victor Wooten, previously, you know, obviously Jacko, but so many bass players that were kind of current at that time, and I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It's what I still want to do, you know. And I, because of my work ethic, maybe culturally, or you know, my family, we were pretty hard workers. I just didn't think I'd be able to sustain studying and turning down gigs. And I was so scared to turn down any gig really in London. I mean, I remember my first 6 years in London, I didn't leave the city. I only left for Christmas. And I didn't leave to go on holiday. I didn't take any holidays, hadn't left the country. Because I just thought if I turn down a gig, I won't get offered the gig again.
Yep.
And, you know, I was living from gig to gig and sometimes saving. But that was just my mindset at the time. And I thought if I study at Trinity, I probably won't have the discipline to turn gigs down in order to study and practice the amount that I want to and need to.
Yeah.
And so when the thing came up at Berkeley, I mean, I was really apprehensive. I was, you know, scared. I thought if I leave, if I come back, no one will remember me. I'll lose all my gigs. You know, I'll have to struggle to get them back, and how am I going to pay rent when I come back, and all of that stuff. And Gary Willis was the teacher at Berkeley Valencia. And I thought, why would I go to Spain? There's nothing happening there. I've never heard of any good music come out of Berkeley. But I had an interview with, his name's Victor Mendoza. He's an incredible vibraphone player and composer. And he was a lecturer at Boston and moved over to Valencia. And my audition was with him. And he told me Gary Willis was the professor at Berkeley. And I mean, you know, who doesn't know Gary?
Yeah.
And I remember I'd seen Gary a couple of years just before that for the first time. I'd never really checked him out at the London Bass Show. Mm-hmm. And he honestly blew me away, absolutely blew my mind. I actually told him that. I remember he said, well, you know, I said, Gary, I'd love to invite you over to do a masterclass at the Institute. I'll ask them to invite you. And he said, he was so kind. He said, oh, you know, I'd love to. And so when I found out that he was there, I just thought, like, I don't think I'd be able to study with anyone better at you know, a university. Yeah. That kind of, so it was a mixture really of being in a place where I thought maybe I'll actually be able to start doing my own thing, yeah, where the cost of living is, you know, a fraction of the price of it was in London. And you know, studying with someone like Gary. So yeah, it was a mixture of things really. I finished studying at Berkeley, and you know, I mean, you could pay a week's rent on a jazz gig over there. Wow. Okay, it might be 50, 60 quid, but that's a week's rent, yeah, in Spain. And I certainly couldn't pay a week's rent on a jazz gig in London. I wasn't really doing many jazz gigs. I don't know how many people can relate to this, but I'd spend all of my time studying jazz and fusion, and then I'd be out playing a pop gig in the evening. Yeah. And, you know, that's not to discredit anyone that does that. It's just not what I was practicing. And I just thought, why, you know, I'm spending so much time practicing this music and no time playing it. Is that ever going to change? And when I went to Valencia, I jumped on those gigs straight away, and there were jams every night. And it just seemed possible that I was able to work on my craft without having to work ungodly hours to fork out for rent. Yeah. So yeah, so that's why I stayed there. And I think the move, I mean, I don't know if anyone, have you been to Valencia?
I have, slightly embarrassingly, only for a stag do. It was a fairly civilized stag do, I would say. We didn't tear up the town too much, but it was beautiful. I absolutely loved it. I can really relate to that because I mean, when I was studying at Leeds, I spent 4 years with Zoltan, you know, doing only jazz for 4 years and soloing and playing all the melodies, doing all that on everything. Didn't play a pop tune or, you know, really like an R&B tune or any kind of groove tune the whole time. And wow. And then moved to London with my 6-string, John Pattucci Yamaha in hand, and immediately started playing pop stuff and functions and all the rest of it, just to start putting some money in the bank. And yeah, that's kind of the path I then went down. And all of that, all those chord tones, all that harmony, all that stuff that I spent all those years studying has really, I mean, it's certainly been used, but I've never played anything of the kind of level that I played, in my finals at the end of Leeds. So yeah, very much kind of, I admire what you did. You stuck to your guns there with it, and that's the music you want to play. So that's what you're going to make happen. So yeah, no, I think that's a brilliant answer. Berkeley led you on to, presumably, to the guys you now play with in your own project, Valmuz.
Yeah.
Am I saying that correctly,
Right.
Valmuz?
So the name actually came from Valencia and Bournemouth.
Okay.
I don't know if you know, but the Z sound in Spanish is a TH. Sorry, the Z is a TH sound in Spanish.
Okay.
We were initially called ATT, which stood for Attwell Connolly Trio. It's not the first name. It looks better as ACT. But there's a German record label, actually a jazz label called ACT.
Yeah.
Which we weren't aware of at the time. And so Peter and I met at Berkeley. Peter Connolly is the guitarist and singer in the band.
I did some White Keys with Peter.
Oh, have you? Okay, cool. He's great, isn't he?
He's great, man. Yeah, really good.
So, yeah, I remember he said that. Obviously, there are two Dans in White Keys. So you're one of the two. Dan Owen's the other.
Dan Owen as well. Yeah, of course.
And Peter didn't say which Dan. So here you are. So that's cool. Okay, I'll talk to him about that later. But I won't go off too much of a tangent. But other works come from our connection, and then that's also gone through Peter, like Darren Reeves. Peter's done some work with Darren. So funny how the circles kind of intertwine.
Yeah, of course.
So Peter,
so you know Darren from, well, I did Oxford Pantomime for years with Darren, and you did the one down in Poole, didn't you? And then
that's right. And then so I did the one in Poole for years, and thanks to you, I saw it come up on Facebook. I was in Valencia, so I saw that come up on Facebook, and I thought that sounds like a lot. I was living in Valencia, and that sounded like a huge amount of money. I mean, that was like I could live comfortably in Spain for about 6 months with that kind of money. It sounds ridiculous, but I went for it and I got the gig. And last year, Darren was looking for someone for Oxford, and Peter had just moved to London. Peter and I moved to London last year, and Peter got that gig. So that was again through Darren.
Oh, cool! I didn't realise he was back involved with Oxford again. That's good.
Well, I'm not sure how much I can say. Last year he was looking for a friend for the MD that he helped get that gig, or still hadn't. I think he was involved with Oxford for a long time and had an affiliation with Oxford or knew the MD, and the MD was looking for a guitarist. So Darren helped the MD find someone, and I put the two of them in touch.
We shared a video on the Overwater Instagram of you guys, which people can check out. But talk us through what kind of music are you guys playing? What are the influences? And obviously, where can we find you if we want to have a listen to the music?
We all find it quite difficult to categorize the music, which is I suppose it's a good thing. We're not pigeonholed, and maybe I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but maybe it's slightly different or unique. But I suppose ultimately it's a mixture of jazz fusion, essentially fusion, I guess, jazz rock. Some people have called it funk, future soul. Some people have called it. We recently had we didn't. We had one show in Valencia a couple of weeks ago with a big band. So our second album was with a big band called Say the Jazz, which are a jazz school out in Valencia. Maybe I could talk to you a bit about how that album happened.
Yeah.
So we were in lockdown in Spain, which was very militant. I mean, it was crazy to think back the kind of things. Like we weren't allowed out of the house. I mean, we were allowed out one day a week, not even one day a week. we were allowed out once a week to buy food, but it had to be a quick shop, and the police would check your bags and receipts to make sure, if you bumped into them, to make sure you had a week's worth of food. There was a roof terrace in the flat we were living, and they would send police helicopters over and threaten you with a 12,000 euro fine if you were on the roof terrace because you might contaminate the floor with COVID. So pretty outrageous. Anyway, we had this opportunity. I think I'm not even sure if it was legal at the time, but we played outside with this big band. So if you look at the videos, everyone's got a mask on.
Yeah.
And we're playing outside, and we definitely had too many people. But Victor Jimenez, the saxophone player in the band, had done some arrangements for a few of his tunes and start the big band arrangements, and decided to do a couple of arrangements for two of my tunes and a couple of pieces. There's a cover in there as well. And we just thought we'd do this gig and record it and film it. And that ended up becoming our second album, which, it's called Synergia, or Synergy in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And that album actually won an award in 2021, which gave us funding to do loads more gigs with that project. So we've done quite a few of those this year. The three of us we all write for the project, and that means that each song is very individual. It sounds, I think you can tell who's written which tune, but when we play together and we all add our own, kind of comes through a lens of the three of us. They still have a sound, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But like Peter's comes from quite a heavy background. Maybe I'm more funk orientated, and Victor's like heavy jazz background. So maybe harmony wise, they're slightly different. But we're really inspired by bands like Hiatus Coyote, Snarky Puppy, Lewis Cole, Jacob Collier. And then we've all got our own influences as well. The initial idea was just very like fusion heavy. We just wanted to make it more accessible, and as accessible has been kind of the key word through the whole project. So Peter only started singing around that time actually, and we started writing words for tunes that we'd written on like progressions that you probably wouldn't normally attempt to sing over.
Yeah.
And that became what the project is now. So we started playing as a trio in Valencia, and Victor, the sax player, who's really well known in the area, heard of this festival, this jazz festival competition in Romania, and said, with all the confidence in the world, guys, if we go to this festival, we're going to win it. And it was a bit of a gamble because we had to buy our own flights, but we went for it, and we actually did win. We got the first prize as well. So with the prize money, we recorded our first album, which is called 3 Days, and that was recorded in 3 days in 3 different places. And we flew Jamie Murray over. Jamie Murray's an incredible drummer based in London. For anyone that doesn't know him, Jamie and I used to live together, and I'd been out in Spain for maybe 3 or 4 years by this point, and I wonder whether Jamie would be up for it. So we called him over. Flew him over. We did one tune, 1 or 2 songs, I think, Golden Brown and Empire, which are up on YouTube. And then we had this idea to do the rest of the album. I think we did 3 songs one day, 2 songs the next, and 2 songs the day after. And I think from then on, the band became what it is now with Victor. Mm-hmm. We're lucky to have 2 fantastic drummers. Joshua Wheatley is the other drummer. He's a teacher at Berkeley, and he's based in Spain. So we often play with him on the gigs in Spain, and Jamie in London. And sometimes we've had them both together. We've had 2 kits, or Josh on keys and vocals, because Josh is an incredible piano player and singer as well. So we're really lucky, and they actually get along too, which is just, I don't understand how it works so well, but it is working.
Brilliant, man. That sounds amazing. I'd love to hear it with both of them. Um, Obviously, you're talking some of the music you're talking about there, and some of the music you would have been studying with Gary and everything out at Berkeley. You're talking
Mhm.
about fairly dense music, difficult harmony, potentially difficult time signatures, difficult rhythms. Are there any real golden nuggets you've picked up from Gary or just in your own studies about the best ways to approach complicated harmony? How, when you're soloing, when you're trying to play melodically through that harmony,
Mhm.
what's your approach?
Well, Gary really wasn't into scales. Uh, he was into and is in a couple of extensions and chord tones, if you like. But I feel that gets used a lot. That expression, but really Gary's approach is to to play the notes that sound good on a chord and to know what those notes are.
Uh,
Um, and I asked him how how do I phrase this? How he makes musical decisions, like what he does in the moment. And he said it's guided by two things: where his hand is on the neck and reacting to what he just played. So, um, I mean, it sounds like quite a simple approach, but to have that control over, like that harmonic control, knowing exactly what you're doing over each chord, I think is quite a, I mean, it's the goal, isn't it? To have that amount of freedom to know
yeah,
exactly what note you want to be playing on which chord. And so we experimented with like the 9, 11, and 13, and they're the notes that he would call hit, in like pentatonic superimpositions is another thing that Gary's really into,
yeah,
because like once you've got a shape that you've really got under the fingers, say the pentatonic shape, if you're superimposing that, you can get these sounds, these textures and colors. You don't really have to change too much in the left hand. If that makes sense. You're using a shape that you're very familiar with and that you can kind of tread, for want of a better word or expression. You know what I mean? So he he's really into that, and building intensity in the solos is something that we worked on a lot. And articulation as well. This Gary is a fretless player,
mhm,
so he showed me ways of building up solos and ending solos well, the notes that you should be playing on a chord, and um, yeah, groove as well. This is another fascinating thing that I'd never considered at the time, which is groove development,
mm,
which is really cool. I often describe it to students, those gears in the car, is when you're driving. If you start in the first gear, you've got 4 or 5 more gears. You've got somewhere else to go.
yeah,
In musical terms, maybe we could describe that as, if you start playing crotchets or minims, then you've got so many more subdivisions to add.
yeah,
So Gary has an app called Groove a Day, and it's basically this concept in an app, which is where you establish a groove and then you develop that groove, and that develops the intensity underneath the soloist.
oh wow, okay,
And I think there are two real ways to approach bass playing. You can have this static groove, because Mark Juliana said it when he came over to do a masterclass at Berkeley. And I think both are super valid and require a lot of time and thought. Um, just something static builds intensity. So where it's just repeating and repeating and repeating.
mhm,
If you play it well, the intensity just somehow builds and builds. But then there's the other way of doing it, where you're actually consciously doing that and adding more with the drummer and building together. I mean, you have to hear him play, but he does this apps with Gergo, and he does talk about it as well. But that was something that's, I think I naturally leaned to that. But through years of learning funk as a kid and bands like Funkadelic or Rage Against the Machine, even I've got Chili Peppers, Parliament, Spine and Family Stone. the bass player, James Brown, bass players that would establish a line and just stick to it, and it's like, very part focused. And I come from that, but then the building, I suppose it's more of a fusion thing because you're improvising, but it only works if the drummer goes along with you. So yeah, I think we really worked. We spent a lot of time on that, on harmonic concepts and soloing, but then also being a bass player and being a real rhythm section player. I feel another gem from Gary was when intensity increases in the band. So let's say a sax player or a guitarist, the higher they go harmonically or melodically, the lower you want to go to support them.
That's a really actionable thing. People can just have that as a nugget in their head to remember.
Yeah,
it's a really nice one.
Trying to condense a year of dense information into this, but
yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously, I'm sure that there's a ton of things, but no, that's some really nice tips, man. Some really good advice that people can actually, and I think, yeah, just that philosophy. Some of the things there, like you just said about moving lower when someone else is going higher, or kind of starting off simply and giving yourself somewhere to run to, is just good bits of philosophy that people can think about in any kind of music, really.
Absolutely, yeah. It doesn't just apply to jazz or fusion.
When I think back to my studies, we did hardly anything talking about playing as a bass player. Really, everything was about harmony and soloing and playing melodically, or lots of stuff on walking bass lines, but not really any stuff about groove and pocket and groove development.
Okay,
that's a really cool thing, and obviously very much in line with, I think, what anyone that knows Gary's playing, it makes sense that would be part of his philosophy of teaching as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he's got some pretty deep concepts when it comes to walking as well, but I feel that they're better explained with the instrument.
Yeah, sure.
It took me a heck of a long time to get my head around, but he basically sees the fretboard in two positions, and again, that's what directs his decisions, his harmonic decisions, and obviously chord tone on 1 and 3, and then chromatics in between. But he had certain rules about certain notes that shouldn't be played on certain chords and why. And I remember doing exercises where they were just like, they made you think so much. I mean, you'd think they were simple. It was it's like the analogy of, when you're walking and suddenly you think which foot's meant to go next and you fall over. It felt like that. It's like, I can't even play anymore.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they're difficult exercises that really make you think about harmony and how each note reacts with the chord or reinforces the harmony.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did talk about that. But again, we didn't play upright, so I wasn't studying upright. So I do think that it's different. Walking on electric, it's a different thing. The G string, for example. I don't like walking on the G string. It doesn't have the same. It's not like an upright where you have that same attack. You kind of lose attack.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about walking on an electric.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of the same. Yeah, I mean, when I was studying, I was only playing electric. I started playing upright later. But certainly, if you're playing a walking line on upright, the G string is almost the most resonant string. It has the most punch. The note really cuts through there. But yeah, on electric, you kind of, as you get onto those thinner strings, they have less weight to them, don't they? You don't get that same kind of bounce and attack to the note that you get from an upright.
Man.
I
keep geeking out now.
Yeah, we could go on for long. So, man, I'll put all the links to the band and Gary's app as well. That sounds really interesting. I wasn't aware of that, so I'll check that out.
Groove a Day, it's called.
Prove a day, yeah, mate. If it gets me doing any practice in the next 6 weeks while I'm on tour, then that'll be an absolute result. Great to catch up with you, man. Thank you so much for
You
doing
too,
it.
Dan.
I'll speak to you
You too,
soon.
man.
I'll see you out there somewhere. Cheers, buddy.
Look forward to it. All right, cheers, Dan. Take care. Bye.